My name is Gregory Guzman, and today I want to talk to you about the benefits of having mail-in voting for this 2020 presidential election. We are now less than 100 days from the election, and voting in person is posing as a problem to the local, state, and even federal government. Just this spring, states like the state of New York, Texas, Maryland, and 15 other states postponed their elections in order to guarantee the safety, to guarantee the health of their voters. Wisconsin, however, moved forward with their election. On April 7th, the voters lined up 6 feet apart, some wearing masks, and poll workers in full protective gear for their safety. However, seeing this contrast in postponing the election in some states and Wisconsin moving forward with their election is now raising the question of how we're going to vote this November for the presidential election and other elections. So many states are now turning to mail-in voting to ensure that the voter stays healthy and calm. Mail-in voting even seems rather new for some people, but it's actually been used since the 1800s, and in these past elections, tens of millions of people have used mail-in voting. In fact, 5 states already do all mail-in voting, which include the states of Utah, Colorado, Oregon, Washington, and Hawaii. And this doesn't necessarily mean that they do their election only through the mail. It only means that they send out a ballot to all the registered voters in their state while still providing in-person voting. And they do this because sending out ballots serves a few good benefits. The ballots are sent out to the voters weeks prior to the election night, so it gives one literally weeks to decide who one wants to vote for, and it makes one feel confident in their decision when dropping off the ballot in their post office. It just gives time for one to talk to their family, their friends about the propositions on the ballot, the candidates on the ballot. So it gives the voter time to influence their friends and families and to get influenced by others in order to feel confident that they're making the right decision in the ballot. But the biggest benefit to having mail-in voting available to every voter is that it doesn't impose on one's day-to-day life as in-person voting does. For those of you who have previously voted in person, you know how much time it can take to vote. To stand in line, it can take hours just to line up and vote. So many times you have to take the day off of work to go vote, or sometimes find someone to take care of your children to vote. It's just very imposing to vote in person in such a short amount of time. I mean, my sister, who just recently turned 19, received her ballot during the spring for the primaries, and I saw the form, and it couldn't have been more simple to fill out that form and mail. In fact, filling out that ballot in the mail looked much more easier than filling out the information in the state testing that we take at school. And that is evident in Nebraska, where in 2018, a county there was given permission to do all mail-in voting. And the voter turnout was 24% in all of Nebraska, but in that one county, it was 58%. More than double than the rest of the state of Nebraska. And in the rest of the country, where states who mail the ballots to their voters, there is a much higher voter turnout in those states than in the states that don't. It means that when voters are offered an easier way to cast their ballot, more people will vote. However, across the nation, mail-in voting poses one intense fear that is quite understandable: fraud. Some fear of the possibility that their ballot can get changed, altered, stolen, or even lost in the mail when it leaves the voter's hands. With that being said, experts in prestigious colleges claim that it is highly unlikely that there could be fraud in mail-in elections today. In fact, the Democracy Program Director from Brennan Center for Justice, Wendy Weiser, said that, quote, "You are still more likely to be struck by lightning than to find mail-in ballot fraud," end quote. The reason it seems unlikely for there to be fraud in an election is because it is very inconvenient to alter votes one by one. So if anything, we should fear of collective fraud, where a bunch of votes are altered at once when they're in the system. But even that is very, very, very rare. And now some state and even federal officials claim that mail-in voting will benefit the opposing party. But in reality, it doesn't really benefit either party. If anything, it should benefit both, because it just means that it'll increase the number of people who vote. And in the end, getting more people's voices heard in the nation is what democracy is all about. It's what democracy is aimed towards. And mail-in voting is nonpartisan, and that is evident in states like Washington and Oregon, where Republicans have been chosen in blue states. Several states will give you an absentee ballot if you have an excuse and request it, which means like if you're out of state or if you're in the military and you want to vote, you can. And there are those states who will give you those ballots mailed in without you having to give in an excuse, like here in the state of California. And that is what caused the problem in Wisconsin. In 2016, about 250,000 people requested a mail-in ballot in Wisconsin and received it. But this year, over 1.3 million people requested a mail-in ballot in that state. But tens of thousands never received one, which led them to vote in person this spring. The state of Wisconsin just wasn't prepared for that many requests. So voting by mail is doable, it just needs to be prepared for. And in the end, every state should still offer in-person voting centers, but it should serve as a backup for those who haven't registered to vote, or those who lost their ballot or never received one. Some states send out updates to the voter, letting them know when they've received the ballot, when their identity has been verified, and when it's been cast. And I believe that that should continue, but I also think that there should be a system in place where it lets the voter know, it gives them updates on their ballot, whether it be by phone or by mail even, where, again, that their vote has been cast, that their identity has been verified. But I also think that they should be given a copy of everything they voted for in their ballot, candidates, propositions, just to ensure that there has been no fraud, to let the voter know that there was no altering at their ballot, and it just lets the voter know that their voice was heard in the election. It's almost like receiving a receipt after you buy something. I'm already pre-registered to vote, and for those the age of 16, I asked that you be as well. I did it at the DMV when I got my permit, and my school offers pre-registration, so if yours does, please pre-register to vote. And for adult citizens, I also ask you to register to vote if you haven't already. I don't care if your beliefs go against mine, or if you support the candidate that I oppose for, just make sure your voice is heard this November. Regardless of your ideas or party during this time, you must feel obligated to vote. It is not only your privilege to vote, but also your responsibility and your duty to do so. So once again, this fall, please make sure your voice is heard. Presidential elections only happen every 4 years. So please, make sure you vote or pre-register to vote. I'm Gregory Guzman. Thank you very much.